You can know the truth and still feel fear. You can heal so much and still draw near to that old flinch. Not because you're broken, but because your body remembers and it's still listening. Welcome back to She Is Here. So, this podcast isn't just about remembering who you were before you were taught to be less, it's also about what happens after that realization. Because many women get to the point where they understand themselves more, they've done the reading, they've had the therapy maybe, they can name patterns and still find themselves stuck and asking, why does this feel so hard? Why do I freeze when I want to speak up? When I know that I've got something worth saying? Why does my body react when I know I'm safe and it's absolutely fine to say what I'm feeling? Why do I get it, but I don't feel it? And if that's you, I want to say this for you right at the start, that it doesn't mean you're failing. I know it feels like it. I used to feel that way too when I was in that mode of getting it and reading everything and researching and making sense of stuff and analysing and seeing the logic in things and still not being able to feel any different. And if you are at that point, it doesn't mean that healing or the stuff you've been doing hasn't worked. It usually means that your nervous system is doing exactly what it was designed to do. It's paying attention, it's scanning for safety, it's responding to patterns it's learned long ago. And in this episode, I want to help you understand what's really going on there. That insight doesn't necessarily equal safety. And one of the biggest misunderstandings I see, both clinically and culturally, and in these narratives that we're told all the time through perhaps Instagram motivational slogans, is this idea that understanding something should automatically change how we feel. That if we can explain it, name it, rationalize it, see the logic, analyze it, that our anxiety should just switch off. But that's not how the nervous system works. There are different kinds of memory at play all the time that influence us. And when most people think about memory, they think of the kind you can describe, where you think about an event and you remember it, or a situation. I remember what happened. I remember who was there. I remember the story I can tell you. That's explicit memory, the kind that you can recall consciously. But there's another kind that's just as powerful and often more influential in everyday life, and that's implicit memory. So implicit memory is body-based. It doesn't need words. It can be like an automatic response almost. It shows up as sensation, emotion, beliefs, reactions, a tight chest, a sinking stomach, a sudden flush of heat, a feeling of dread that seems to arrive out of nowhere, or your jaw clenching before you've even had a thought enter your head that you've been aware of. The thing to understand with all this is that implicit memory doesn't always show up because something bad is happening in the present. It often shows up because something in the present has activated a memory network and your nervous system's remembering. It might be a set of associations your brain has built up over time, and those networks can be activated by a tone of voice, a facial expression, a look, a smell, a taste, a touch, a place, a familiar dynamic, a phrase, a word, a sensation in your body, an emotion like shame or fear, or a belief like, I'm going to get this wrong. So you might be thinking, why am I reacting like this? I know I'm fine, like everything's fine, I don't get it. And your body's going, this is reminding me of something else, or I know there's an association with this that wasn't pleasant in the past, or I know this pattern. You don't remember implicit memory in words, you feel it, which means that you can know something is okay in your head, you know it, you get it, and you still feel your body tighten or respond or react. And that doesn't mean that you're irrational. It means your body learned something once or over time, and it's checking whether it still applies. It's biology. So a real life example I can give you from my own experiences, and I know a lot can relate to this, but have you ever noticed that Sunday night you get that feeling, that low level dread as Monday approaches? And even if you genuinely don't hate your job, even if Monday you know it's going to be fine, you can logically tell yourself, I'm okay, it's fine, nothing to worry about, and still feel that familiar heaviness or like pit in your stomach feeling. That can be implicit memory at play. Your nervous system may have learned years ago that Sundays led to pressure, to some sort of performance or being evaluated, to not being able to escape something. Maybe it links back to school memories. or early jobs, or toxic work environments, or people, or being criticized, or feeling like, oh, you have to perform to be okay. So, no, it's not that you're just an anxious person. There isn't something wrong with you. Your body may be remembering a pattern or something it learned at a certain point in time. There's so many layers to this. And the thing to bear in mind is that not all fear comes from the same place. And this is the part that really matters. Not every anxious response does come from memory. Sometimes your body is responding to something real in the present. Sometimes it's reacting because you're on the edge of change. Sometimes it's a blend of all three. And those situations need different responses. So instead of asking, what's wrong with me? See if you can gently shift to that curiosity that I always talk about and ask, where might this be coming from? Drawing from my own lived experience of this, but have you ever noticed yourself waiting to speak in a meeting? Not because you don't have anything to say, but because you're watching everyone else first. You're scanning, tracking tone, looking out for what mood people are in, trying to get a gauge of the atmosphere, looking at body language, facial expression. Who feels safe to agree with, like who doesn't? And as you're waiting, you can feel it in your body, maybe like notice your heart rate increase, you feel shaky or a tight chest. Your breathing changes, the tension's building. You're building yourself up to it almost because you don't want to misinterpret the environment or say the wrong thing. Maybe you don't want to be seen as rude or stupid or out of place or different. And with that, you might put meaning to that and say that, like I used to, and say, oh, I'm just not confident enough. Why can't I just be confident? And yet, what we're describing there is not about confidence. It's about safety or a lack of safety. It's about a nervous system that learned read the room first, then decide if it's safe. Your nervous system doesn't distinguish between physical threat and perceived social threat, like rejection, humiliation, being shamed or singled out. To your body, those register as danger. And that didn't come from nowhere, it came from experience as well, like from moments, early or repeated, where speaking up might have had consequences, where staying quiet felt safer. And sometimes it also comes from what you already know in that moment about those people in that room, the power dynamics, the culture within the environment, the lack of safety or inclusion. Your body isn't malfunctioning, it's responding intelligently to context or memory. And this is why insight alone doesn't switch this off. This is why someone can be deeply self-aware and insightful and read the books and listen to the podcasts and understand childhood and name patterns and still feel that bodily reaction, because insight doesn't automatically create safety. Safety is something your body learns through experience. And sometimes that present environment is still sending not safe signals. It's not always our stuff. So when you feel stuck, the question isn't, what's wrong with me? It's, what is my nervous system tracking right now? So you might be wondering, well, what do we do about this? This isn't about controlling your nervous system. It's not about overriding the neurobiology going on. It's about building a relationship with your nervous system that feels safe and attuned. Because when we try to get rid of it or fight it, or stop it, we often create more unsafety. There's a lack of trust there in that feeling and that nervous system and that relationship with it. So what we can start with is naming it. So instead of that judgment and criticism, try naming it and noticing it. Something in me feels unsafe right now. I'm noticing, and then whatever the feeling is, it might be tightness or butterflies. Name the feeling. I'm noticing fear or I'm noticing anxiety. Even that pause can interrupt the shame spiral. And then you can gently ask, is this coming from memory? What might my body be remembering? Or is this about the present? What am I noticing about this environment, the people in it, the predictability or inconsistency or tone or inclusion or exclusion? Or is this the edge of something new? Am I doing something unfamiliar? Am I introducing or removing something that I would normally do? Am I changing a pattern that that I know? You could even give it rough percentages, like, oh, this feels like 60% memory or 30% present stuff or 10% new. You don't have to do that, and there's no right answer with the percentages. It's just allowing yourself that moment to be curious and start unhooking from it and see what's really going on rather than just what feels like it's going on, if you see what I mean. And the more you do that, the more you can start responding based on the answer. So if it feels like memory, you might imagine that this feeling belongs to a younger you, a little girl inside who learned that the world was unsafe or that a certain situation you're in now didn't feel safe. And if that's the case, you can see if you can acknowledge her, really tuning into it, and notice how you might respond if it was a little girl. You might say something like, "Of course, this makes sense." And you might try and ask what she needs to know or to hear to help her feel that bit safer. And then you can do something grounding and simple, like feel your feet on the floor, soften your jaw, lengthen your exhale, maybe name 3 things around you that you can see to remind yourself this is now. It's not back then. And when you notice the things in the present that might be activating that response in your nervous system, this is where discernment comes in. You might ask, what specifically feels unsafe here? What do I need more of or less of to feel steadier or safer in myself? It's considering, is my truth welcome here? Is my self welcome here? Or is it managed? Or assessing whether or not this environment punishes honesty. Because if that's the case, then adapting or pretending or hiding parts of yourself or masking doesn't mean you're failing. It means you're wise, like you're responding to the environment that you're in. And if it feels like the edge of change, slow it down if you need to and remind yourself, my body prefers what's familiar. Even if I know logically this new way is more helpful or healthier or better for me, my body, my nervous system prefers the familiar. This feeling doesn't mean I'm doing anything wrong. It means I'm doing something different. And then you might take smaller steps to build up evidence to show that your nervous system that it's safe enough to try something new. Working with your nervous system is always more sustainable than fighting it. And if you're listening to this thinking, I don't even know what I feel half the time, which is what I used to be like back in the day. Again, you're not failing at this. You're not broken or failing or a problem or anything like that. It makes sense when you consider if you've spent years scanning others, managing everyone else's reactions, being the good one, externally focusing on everyone else's needs and wants and trying to do what you can to meet their expectations or adapt yourself to best fit what they want from you. There's not a lot of internal focus going on in those times. Therefore, it will take a little bit of time to practice noticing, because you may have spent a lot of time thinking feelings instead of feeling them. So early on, this work isn't about changing anything. It's about noticing, observing, getting curious. That's often where safety begins, when you start to build up a safety with feelings themselves. And as I say, this isn't about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you were before you were taught to be less and learning what safety actually means in your real life. Because when safety increases, your body doesn't have to rush. And when it doesn't have to rush, you can slow down enough to stop and hear yourself again. I hope this has been helpful. I know it's so frustrating when you get it, but you don't feel it and you're trying to do all the things that you're meant to be doing, or you feel like you're meant to be doing and that you should be doing, and then change in your feeling doesn't come through. And it's so much more common than what you might realise or know. But it is possible for you to feel safe enough and your nervous system to know it's safe enough for change to occur. And I'm just going to leave you with just a little few spoken words just to close this episode and leave you with something to think about. You're not behind, you're not broken, you're not too much. You're learning the language your body speaks, and the truth is, it was only ever trying to keep you safe. She is here. And if you listen closely, you might just start to hear what she's been trying to say.